What's up, YouTube? Welcome back. So, I want to talk about something that I don't think has really been spoken about specifically and especially in depth, and that is the bottom 10% and respectability politics as it relates to the colorism conversation. Yeah. Now, I think every group has a bottom 10%. That segment of the group that is doesn't perform well and perhaps is undesirable as well. And even, the other 90% would even want to distance themselves from that segment of their group. I think every group has that in one form or another. In one way or another, I think so. Yeah. But this bottom 10%, I'm just going to, reference the colorism conversation when I'm talking about bottom 10% in this video. All right. So when we talk about colorism, oftentimes people will use the bottom 10% of brown skin and dark skinned black women to derail colorism conversations, right? And try to make it seem like the bottom 10% of brown skin and dark skinned black women represents all brown skin and dark skinned black women. Like recently, uh, that mother who went on Facebook Live and talked about the looks of her child and criticized how her child looks, even though that woman, I don't even think that woman was dark skinned. Or some people argue that she was brown skinned. I kind of think she was perhaps safe brown. The pictures that I saw, she looked like she was lighter skinned. But, whatever skin tone she was, I don't think she was a dark skinned woman. Nevertheless, people made it seem as if, okay, this woman represents all black women. And that happens, right? When it's a negative portrayal of a black woman, no matter the shade, it's like she represents all black women, right? Now, when brown skin and dark skin black women fuck up and do some foul shit, they represent brown skin and dark skin black women. They don't tend to represent all black women. And they don't put that blanket when it comes to them. They don't blanket the whole population of black women. So honestly, if you really think about it, brown skin and dark skin black women have to answer for their bottom 10%, but also the bottom 10% of every other segment of black women within the community. Notice that. I'm like, what's up with that? How did that happen? Right? So then, in this conversation of the bottom 10%, people sometimes feel compelled to defend their bottom 10%, or either distance themselves from their bottom 10%, right? And white people do it to us. They do set it up where it's like, oh, this, thug black dude represents all black men, right? Who, this thug black dude who robbed a liquor store and shot up somebody's car represents all black men, and we have to answer for that. Even though some mask shooter shooting up a school who's a white male, like, they don't have to really answer for that. You notice that, right? Or like some domestic terrorists, they don't really have to answer for that. You notice that, right? Those men who do that, those white men who commit those crimes, they don't represent all white men. They aren't used to represent all white men. They get individualized, right? But when it's us, that black man who robbed a liquor store and shot up some folks on the way out or whatever. He represents all black people, really. Not even black men, not even just black men, but all black people. And within this colorism conversation, it kind of functions a similar way, right? Where, the brown skinned and dark skinned black women, when they're filing colorism complaints, every single aspect gets scrutinized, right? And they have to answer for every single aspect of, that's considered bad, And it's like sometimes some of these women are like some of these groups of women are not even really affiliated with each other. Like, there's a divide between the black women who swirl and the black women who don't. But if the black women who swirl do some foul shit or come out and say some foul shit, the collective of brown skin and dark skinned black women, and even just black women in general, can't distance themselves from that, right? Like if Serena Williams, let's say Serena Williams came out and said some foul shit about black men. She would represent all, especially because she's dark skinned, right? They would make sure to emphasize her dark skin and also make all black women accountable for her, but especially brown skin and dark skinned black women. Right? They'll definitely make brown skin and dark skinned black women accountable, and really I think they'll even just put it all on all black women, right? But on the flip side, when the black men come out and say some foul shit, whether it's colorist or just some coon shit, it's like it's individualized, and I think this is just an example of power dynamics at play, right? Just like when it comes to white and black people, it's just an example of power dynamics at play, right? Since they're the ones in the position of power, they don't really have to answer for Timothy McVeigh or whatever his name was, who did the bombing back in the day. And the same thing with colorism conversations. Since black men are kind of like in the position of power in this situation, then they don't really have to answer for, say, what Tory Lanez did a little while back, right? And what these countless male celebrities say when they come out and say colorist fuck shit, right? But this situation leads to respectability politics, okay? And respectability politics, it's nuanced to me. I think that there are some times when respectability politics work, or at least are necessary, and there's other times where it's just a waste of time. It's not going to work no matter what you do, no matter how you say it. It's just not going to work. We've seen it play out when it comes to racism. Sometimes, no matter how respectful the black man is, he wasn't a thug. He didn't have a gun. He was non-threatening, quote unquote, whatever that means. He complied with the officer, right? He didn't resist arrest or anything, right? He did everything right, but still, when this, white officer did some foul shit to him, white people don't answer for it, right? White people aren't held accountable for it, right? And on the flip side, you have evidence of this white officer, doing some foul shit, even maybe referring to him as a racial slur, pulling him over for no reason. Perhaps even has a history of questionable behavior in regards to racism. So many other factors out there. But even still, there's no accountability. There's no responsibility for what this person did, this white police officer did. And, where I'm coming at and where I'm trying to bring this around to is in the conversation of colorism, this sort of dynamic is at play, right? And then not police, but respectability politics in regards to colorism. I think that sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. Again, it's nuance. It doesn't have a one set answer. It just depends on the situation. It's on a case by case basis, right? And then, respectability politics sort of came up recently when it came to this mother on Facebook criticizing her child's looks and features and whatnot. And, some black women were defending the mother. Some black women were distancing themselves from the mother. And I feel like either situation, either way you go, you lose. Like if you distance yourself, you can't. They won't let you distance yourself from her. If you defend the mother, then they'll flip it around and say, oh, you're anti-black or you're a colorist because you defend the mother. So I understand in some situations where people are just fed up with respectability politics and they're just like, I'm just going to say whatever the fuck I want because either way it goes, it's not going to be received well. So I might as well just go all in. And that's low-key kind of like how I approach this sort of subject in this situation when it comes to these colorism conversations. It's like sometimes, no matter what I say, I know it's not going to be received well because it's just not an easy pill to swallow. All right. So it also depends on your audience and who you're trying to reach as well. Some people will respect respectability politics and some people will not. So it just depends, I think, honestly. I think it just really depends on the situation. Because, you do have to be cognizant of your public image. That's true. You don't want to have a public image where it's like, okay, well, this is why you get treated this way because this is how you behave. But on the flip side, it's like sometimes no matter what you do, you're still going to be labeled in a negative way. Sometimes. And, for me, at this point, I do kind of feel like if someone's not offended by what I say, then I did something wrong. When it comes to these colorism conversations, and it comes to black people in these colorism conversations, if somebody's not offended or in their feelings about something that I've said, then I probably did something wrong. I probably didn't speak as candidly as I should have. I probably didn't keep it as real as I should have. I probably didn't keep it 100. All right, I probably maybe kept it a 50, maybe 75, percent, but not 100. And also, I kind of want to talk about this for a quick second. I recently did a video addressing accusations of me pandering to brown-skinned and dark-skinned black women. And I found some of the comments to be a little interesting. One dude who's been subscribed to me for a minute, a brown-skinned, dark-skinned brother, about mid to late 40s, lives in the tri-state area. works in the IT field, and he said, like, hell yeah, you pander to brown skin and dark skinned black women, you know, and you put down and bash brown skin and dark skinned men and light skinned mixed biracial women to do your pandering or to uplift brown skin and dark skinned black women. You know, he says that I attempt to disparage dark skinned men and light skinned women to elevate dark skinned women. And I do think there's a difference between pandering and advocacy. Another user brought that up, and I think that was a very great thing to bring up, and I appreciate that. That was very insightful to say, because there is a difference between advocacy and pandering. But nevertheless, I bring that up to say that oftentimes you're going to be accused by groups that you are implicating when it comes to this colorism conversation. I don't think there's no positive way to really say and to send this message without diluting the true essence of the message, the true purpose of the message, because I could, come up here and just be PC Steve and say all the things that would make me be neutral, and come and say, colorism affects us all equally. And while I do agree that colorism does affect us all, I don't think it's equal though. So for me, I tend to lean toward the side of, forget colorism politics, fuck colorism politics, or, forget respectability politics when it comes to colorism, right? And I think for me, it's a bit easier because my platform isn't as big. So if I were to say something that was foul or messed up or whatever, it wouldn't be as much of a pushback because I'm not really popular. But for people who perhaps have bigger platforms, they kind of do have to be a bit more careful in the messages that they put out there. But on the flip side, sometimes I think people will even purposely misconstrue your message, twist your message, and sometimes just downright lie on what you say. Because I've heard things about some YouTubers who talk about colorism, and I'm like, well, I don't think they ever said that. Like, I've been listening to, those YouTubers for a while, and I've never heard them speak about anything like that. So, yeah, it's like, for me, respectability politics, I understand, and to a certain extent, I do kind of try to present myself in a certain way to the point where, I maintain my own self-respectability and present myself in a respectable way so that when I say something, it will have validity and it will be taken seriously and people can't dismiss it because, oh, this person's crazy. Oh, this person is a angry, belligerent, bitter, jealous hater type of thing. So on that aspect, I kind of think respectability politics can work perhaps because you do work in the sense that you have to present yourself in a respectable way so that your message will be taken seriously. So on that aspect, I do think that respectability politics sort of do work to an extent, right? Because it's harder to undermine the message and to dismiss the message when the messenger is respectable, quote unquote. You know, be, because I have heard some YouTubers who've have great messages, but it's like because of the way that they go about expressing and presenting their message, I think that sometimes people won't take them seriously or will just dismiss them because it kind of comes off as, oh, this person is just crazy and you don't want to be associated with a crazy person or, you know, listen to a crazy person because then people will judge you. Like, oh, you kind of rock with this person. So people start giving you the side eye. But as I said, like sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It's just knowing when to jump in and knowing when to skip this round. Yeah. And sometimes people will try to run that game, and it's like and make it seem like, oh, if only you were respectable. They might not come out and say that specifically, but that's what they'll run with. An idea like that, as if like, oh, I can't really take you seriously if only you were a bit more, quote unquote respectable. You weren't cursing so much. You weren't bashing people so much. You weren't criticizing and making fun of people so much, right? And sometimes they'll run that game on you as if like if only you just presented yourself in a more respectable way, they would support your message. And a lot of times that's just not the case. No matter how politically correct you present the message, they will still find fault with it some way. We have seen that play out many a time. So to sum it up, there's a time and a place for everything, including respectability politics, and including throwing respectability politics to the wind and not giving a fuck and just saying it how it is. But I will say, I think people who engage in respectability politics in regards to colorism and just in general are trying to get people who are on the other side to come to their side. While people who don't engage in respectability politics have said, fuck the other side. I don't give a fuck about them anymore, or perhaps never at all. So I think that's something to take into consideration too. Are you trying to get people on your side? Are you just trying to put out the message? Sometimes it's like, well, can you really get people on your side no matter what you do? It's a lot of things that go into this. Yeah. The way I see it is, and the way I operate typically is just put the message out there. The people who rock with you, rock with you. The people who don't. What more can you do? If they don't, perhaps they may come around. Perhaps. But this conversation can go on for a while, because it's kind of goes deeper and deeper as you talk. But I'm going to bring this video to a close. But I wanted to put that out there. This is just a segment of the colorism conversation that doesn't really get addressed and is very much overlooked. So what do you guys think? Do you think that people should be engaging in respectability politics when it comes to colorism conversations? Do you think that respectability politics and colorism conversations are useless? What do you think? Let me know in the comment section. Until the next video, adios and goodbye for now. And one more thing I want to mention. Um, Sometimes you will see a battle within a group when it comes to respectability politics versus no respectability politics, because oftentimes people will use the people who don't engage in respectability politics to represent the whole group in a negative way. So that's another reason why you may see a battle between respectability politics and not engaging in respectability politics. And of course, in general, you'll see that in general, but especially when it comes to colorism conversations. Well, maybe not especially, but it applies to colorism conversations as well. So yeah, that's all I gotta say. Thanks for watching. Peace.